Oh, all right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get into Chapter 5 here. I'll start with our little bit of background information on files and permissions and actually accessing files from your script. And here's kind of the crazy part. You can actually be... in your script, you can simulate somebody on the command line. So if you need anything done on the command line, you could actually do that through your program, such as remove all of the directories and all that stuff. So when we get into Chapter 5, it starts with probably one of the more important things about Chapter 5, and that is permissions. And here's kind of an example of the remove directory command that you can use. And other languages that are server-sided programming allow this too. Pretty much every language you have has the capability for you to act like you're in the command line. I think C, it's called fopen or something like that. But yeah, you can actually make a program that acts like you're somebody typing on the keyboard. Essentially you're that user. So what you got to kind of keep in mind is that when you're dealing with the user that's coming through Apache, that's the user that you're going to be using for your files and opening your files. So if you're like your own user on your computer and you go in and you create a file, that file is going to be created with your permissions, and only you should have access to that file. But you're dealing with files for another user that's called the Apache user. I'm just calling it Apache user. It's probably got a different name, but and they change it periodically. But it's a service user. So to be able to open those files, you have to give the permissions to the Apache user over that file. And the Apache user only has the capability of working within the www directory. And that's where a lot of your security comes in, is with permissions and the user that's actually allowed on the system that Apache is working with. And so it's not totally, but here's the thing is, once you know how to build a tool, you get to the world where you're building a tool, hacking isn't really hacking. It's just another tool that you're misusing. You know what I mean? It's just like they're just tools. So we're got a few things that we're gonna talk about first before we get into our fun time, which is I think we're gonna do 5.2 today. I think 5.2 is the good one. I'm not going to get into the binary file versus text file. You guys should know this stuff by now. We're in the 300 course here. Most of the goal for this course is just being able to hook up to a database and show it on a website. Now, the first database implementation was with files. And you will still see a lot of stuff out there, code that needs file work. Canvas, you can upload files to Canvas. Canvas is built using a server-sided programming language. And it has to deal with files. So almost all the portal websites nowadays have to, they all have to deal with files. Pictures, images, all that stuff. So file permissions is important in a lot of different aspects, because let's say that you have a database that stores where the files are located, but not the files themselves. You could have all kinds of different schemes on making these things work. So let's go a little bit more into the kind of what you're working with, the structure of dealing with files and file permissions. And the thing is you're going to be working with that Apache user in the www folder. So that means that when you get into that www folder, the files that you deal with, any file in that www folder that is created, and you want to be able to open and read through the web browser, you got to make sure that the Apache user has access to it. Now, you can make sure of this if you create the file. Don't create the file as you in the www folder. You can create the file using code through the Apache user and your PHP. Or if you create the file and put it into the www folder, then you got to look at permissions. Now, I'm working on a Windows system right now, so that's not going to be as prevalent that I make sure that the file that I create has the permissions that allow the Apache user to read write from that file. So we'll look at it. But if you're on like a Mac system, or Mac slash Unix or Linux system, that's something you may have to use the command called I call it chmod, but essentially it's what you can use to change your permissions. So let's talk more about permissions and the different types of files you would have. Well, you would only have two different types of files. One would be an executable file, and the other would be just a normal data file. An executable file is an actual program. So you could start a program from your program if you wanted to, that would run on the machine. But predominantly, mostly what you're going to be doing for this example and what we're implementing is permissions for read and write, not execute. Execute is a specific permission that is for setting a particular file as a program that actually runs. So it's when you actually compile the program and send and put it in the www directory, then you tell it that it has permission to execute in that directory. If it does not have executable permissions in that directory, your host, that program won't run, which is a good thing because we don't really ever want to allow execute privileges nowadays unless we are building something special. And that's one of the first things that I built was as an old email list filer, where somebody would go to a web page and put their email into a list, and the email would go on to a list, and whenever somebody wanted to send out an email to everybody, they would send the email out to that list that was held online. And you could always go in and add yourself to that email list. Well, I had to go in and build an executable on FreeBSD, an old Unix system. I built it in C. I did server-side scripting in C. Yeah, it was horrible because C is not the best language to do server-side programming because it's so temperamental and it's highly prone to cause issues in certain instances, unlike interpreted languages, which can actually kind of sometimes check an error or just happily ignore a bad code and continue on with its process. So that read and write is what we're going to be working with mostly for the files that we'll have to deal with. So you may have to be running the chmod function to change your permissions on your files to be able to allow your Apache user to read and write from the files that we're gonna have. So that is kind of the main thing of this chapter is the ability to essentially do whatever you want in the directory system of the machine that you're in. And there's some other things that you want to go into and look at. Some common commands like make directory. PHP makes this really easy because they just put these functions in the language itself. Other languages you would actually have to get a whole library to be able to make a directory or something. But PHP, it's all part of it, and that's one reason why we use PHP for what we do with it. Okay, so this read through all this, But here's the most important part that you understand is that permissions part. Remember, you're creating a file as, you're not the Apache user creating if you create a file, you're not the Apache user. It's not your file. So we may have issues when we create a text file for the Apache user to read from. And we're going to find that out here pretty soon. I think this one right here, storing the uploaded file, that would be a really cool one. You guys, that's actually an extra credit one for this particular module. Okay, so let's get into having some fun. We hit the main parts. Permissions, permissions, permissions. Remember, you're not, when it runs, it's a whole different user, and that's where everybody has problems with server-side programming. They just don't understand that one basic fact. So we have to then get into some fun. And let's do our normal NetBeans, and then we're going to go into 5.2 and get that one working. And this will give us a little bit of play so that we can see if there's any permissions problems from Windows, and it'll help get you set up to be successful for this module. So let's go ahead and get going on this, and then I'll start copying some code along, and we'll start testing it. I'm going to go ahead and hit pause while I get things set up. You've seen this enough times. Okay, let's go ahead and look at what we're going to accomplish here. For 5.2, it looks like we're going to create a guestbook, and what we are actually going to be saving is going to go to a text file, and we need to make sure it has read and write permissions for everyone. Ensure the project's directory has read and write permissions for everyone. So they're saying, okay, screw it. Just instead of making it read and write privileges just for the Apache user, let's make it read and write privileges for everyone. Okay. Actually, that's probably the approach I would take, because you guys are learning right now, and just to get something to work is a major victory. And when you don't get something to work because of silly stuff, it drives you insane. Okay, let's get into this. I think we're good for this particular part. So we're building a guestbook. So let's go ahead and look at some of the actual PHP code we're going to need. Looks like we're going to need some simple form-based elements. Looks like we're doing an all-in-one form, I believe. And then we're going to continue on. So it looks like we're going to take this to where we can actually, probably do something with the file, just so you guys have something to start with that works, and then we'll call it good. And it looks like to me that I think I got all my settings set up right. Oh no, maybe not. It looks like I'll have to look into how I set that up. Okay. What I'll do is I'll just run this file right here. Okay, I'll have to fix that. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is get this in here. I'm going to fix that little error from the setup of the project, and then we'll continue. So go ahead and get this stuff in there. And just a reminder, yeah, it's helpful that you actually have WAMP started to test your scripting. Let's get a green light here from WAMP. Okay, we got a green light. All right, now let's see if we got something. There we go. Okay, blah 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 blah. Submit. Okay, so let's continue on with this little form. and then what we're going to do is we're going to save it to a disk in the www directory. Okay, so looks like we got a few more bits of code. I believe this is PHP, so we'll, oops. So we'll throw that one in here. And it looks like it starts with an if statement, and that's basically looking to see, hey, have we already sent data? If not, then show the form. So we've got that in. Now we do our else. Hopefully it grabbed all of it. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, that might be just a, let's see. Okay. All right. Drive me insane with this syntax. Oh, and then they add it in for you. Golly. Okay. Well, let's get these guys rolling along then, and working right. Be careful with that autofill, because it'll kill you every time. I remember those old Word days when Word was a real pain in the rear, and it would always do this stuff for you. Oh, and you didn't want it? Yeah, so pretty typical that, you know, free software is a little bit on the unpolished side in some areas. Okay, so it looks like this else is the only one that goes when you pass, and this is the else that happens when you don't pass. That doesn't make any sense that they would do it like that. So let's look at how they did it. So yep, sure enough. Okay, I'm gonna get this function in and get it all pretty and looking good, and then I'm gonna do it for the rest of these guys, and then we're going to get into 5.3 a little bit. It looks like we need, what I want to do is I just want to give you I want to get it so that we can send data to the guestbook text. Let's just put some data in there, and then you guys will be ready to kind of take this on your own. Okay, I'm gonna get the code in, so I'm not wasting any more of your time, and then we'll get to having more fun. Okay, so let's take a look at this code. Now that I've gotten it done, we have a few text forms or input box, first name and last name essentially for the guestbook, and then we have the file code that is written down here that essentially opens up the file guestbook.txt, and that file will be, it looks like you got to set it parameters on how it's going to behave. AB parameters, you know, I'm wondering, we could probably look at the Python fopen arguments, because for opening a file, you can do it multiple ways. For open it, and if it doesn't exist, create. RT and WT mode. So what's AB mode? Open arguments AB mode, because I forgot. Okay. So A is open for writing. Oh, I imagine B is probably the old school for reading and writing. That might be the newer, one of the newer versions for it. Oh yeah, here we go. Python fopen documentation would also have it. Oh no, A is for append. B is for, no, it's not binary mode. Okay, well, we may have to get into that a little bit more, but this is all open, not fopen. Fopen is going to be Python fopen. Oh no, arguments. Just arguments. You know what? Let's move on and let's play. We'll come back to this in a little bit in case we have any problems. So we're going to open up the book for writing and appending. B, I'm not for sure that's probably a mistake there. I'm not for sure on that, but we'll see in a little bit. So if the file is writable, that means if you have the permissions, and what that is looking at is, does the Apache user have access? Does the Apache user have access, and is that file writable? So it's not just two things, or not just one thing, but two things. Number one, the file has to be writable. That means you have to change it. You have to be able to change it. And then the user that is running through the www folder has to have access to it. So those two things need to be, or nothing will work. And it's even more difficult to get to deal with in Unix and Linux. So let's look to see, because when I ran this, there's not really a check that we can do unless we go into the www directory or write the code that's given you for instructions later on. But what we can do is we can just look in the www directory and see if anything worked there, because we don't have this signed guestbook action built yet. But we are checking to see if this code worked. So I imagine that it didn't right off the bat. So what I'm going to go ahead and go is just look at that www directory that we have and just verify, and then I'm going to go troubleshoot, and then I'm going to get back on the horn and you know, get with you on that. So yeah, it's definitely did not work. So here's where we then create the guestbook.txt, and it's called guestbook. I imagine that fopen is probably not open create. It's probably just open append. Yeah, it has to probably exist. So let's go ahead and throw that in there. Guestbook.txt. Okay. There. Okay, and remember, here's the big one. If you don't know this by now, you have no business being in 3.16. But I have to tell my 100 and 200 students all the time. Make sure you view file name extensions, so you're not naming it .text and wondering why the hell it won't open. Ridiculous. Okay, so now let's try this again. Okay, blah 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 blah. Submit. Okay, now let's see what happened. I absolutely, yep, no problem. I knew it wasn't going to work that easy. Too easy. So if is writable. So let's do this. The problem is we can't see any errors because we are going to there. Let's do this. Let's do some print statements. And I'm not going to do the debug, xc debug just yet. I'm just going to, you know, if I have to do that, then I'm going to have to hit pause and get into other things. So let's just do a print of the first name, and then we'll just use this as kind of, hey, is it getting here? And then we're going to have to get in and look at permissions and look at how we can actually modify that to allow access to it. Okay, print first name. Okay, let's see if it even gets here. The only issue is we can't stop it before we get to where it actually changes and gets to show Guestbook. Okay. Yeah, because this code only runs right here when that web page. So I got some problems to deal with here, because the issue is we want this data to be saved, and I made a mistake and I did not call this index.php like I should have. Hopefully I'm not on pause with this little fix. Yeah, that would be kind of, yeah, okay. Yeah, we just did all-in-one forms, and that's kind of what we're doing. We're just doing a really stupid simple one. So that's why it's not working. We're not able to get any output. Because when it goes to a web page, it doesn't exist for when it's actually supposed to run that code, is when it detects that first name and last name is actually not empty, and we've just hit the submit button, therefore we'll run this code. All right. Now when we test it, it's going to actually now run that PHP code, because it's going to detect that this is no longer empty. And it looks like we got a few errors to fix on some other ones. So let's do this. Close tabs. Okay. Okay. Got a few more issues to deal with. All right, I am going pause. I'll be back with the solution. So yeah, I changed it in the wrong spot. So this is for showing the guestbook, and this is where we want index.php for that. And this would be show guestbook and show guestbook. You guys will be building that. So it's this one right here, action index.php. Because I always name mine index, because I hate having, I like the auto features of it, just so I have to hit the play button and everything goes. So we got index.php for the action item now. So now we should be able to actually run the PHP script to test it finally. Yes! Thank you for signing our guestbook. You're kidding me. It was that easy? I didn't even... Oh, because we're on Windows. If you're on Unix, you're going to have to probably do a chmod or something like that. You're going to have to change your permissions for that file. Let's see if it actually worked. You know, it literally took me less than an hour to do that. In 1999, it took me 3 months using C. I did it for a senior project, building an old email server, just like a guestbook, and it worked on text files, and it was more than 1,000 lines of code, which is not much. My largest program is in the hundreds, in like I think more than 100,000 lines of code, all wrote by yours truly. But yeah, we've come a long way. That is incredible. I mean, literally, that's what PHP is for, and that's why it was built, because I actually, and WAMP too. I didn't have WAMP. I had to set up all the Apache server. I had to set up all the permissions. I even had to set up. It just was so much more difficult. It took me, weeks just to get the server going before I could even start programming with it. And actually, it took me weeks just to install the operating system to run the server. So no, it didn't take me 3 months. It was more like, because it was semesters. So that's not quarters. No, it was a whole semester, 6 months. Yeah, that sounds right. 6 months in less than 40 minutes. Wow. PHP, you do a lot for us. Thank you. All right, guys. That gives you, remember that permissions. I mean, we're lucky. I'm lucky here on Windows. I just had to make sure that the file was created and I didn't have permissions for problems, especially when it's in the directory of the user. Those of you who are using Unix and Linux may have permission issues that you have to deal with.